Got a fantastic panel today, and I'd love to get Dan and Guy and Katrina up. While you're making your way down, so Louise Mercer is my name. I'm Chief Experience Officer at Everledger. I get the great joy of working with wonderful people like Rakeleen, who you just heard from, and Leanne Kemp. And it's been an incredible ride there over the past 5 years in terms of what we've built and fixed. And this last session today is last panel, I don't think it's the last session, is called Fix This. So we've got Katrina, we've got Dan, we've got Guy with us. Now Dan Voyce, CTO of Tymlez and self-declared general nerd. I'll go with that, yep. We've got Guy Dickinson, who's the founder and CTO of Betacarbon, and maybe I'd characterise you there as a carbon credit missionary. Would that fit, right? And Katrina Donaghy, well known amongst us as well, CEO of Civic Ledger, generous industry prophet. I think she's been around for so long and given so generously of her time and expertise. So I'd love you guys to just take a minute, introduce yourselves a little bit more fully, and then we'll get into Fix This.
Thank you, Louise. My name is Katrina. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Civic Ledger. This is my hometown, and I'd like to welcome you all here. Brisbane is a very special place for me, and for all these people in the audience, we've been around for a long time. But Civic Ledger was founded back in 2016 because we saw a problem in the way citizens interact with government, and we're very interested on how we could use this technology to bring trust and transparency and accountability back into those two-sided transactions. So we're now 6 years old, still around, so obviously we're going to share some of our stories with you this afternoon.
Hi, so I'm Dan Voyce. I'm the CTO of Tymlez. Tymlez is a solutions provider with a focus on ESG solutions. We've been around since 2016 as well. We're based out of the Gold Coast. We've got a development team down in Melbourne. And like I said, much of it really is about helping people really get a wrangle on what their ESG and carbon footprint looks like, and really making sure that we can secure that with data.
Is that working? No, there you go. Hi, Guy Dickinson. I used to be a banker not long ago, and I used to talk to a lot of people about doing good things, and everyone was talking about measuring, which you need to do, absolutely, but there wasn't many calls to action. And this technology allowed me to allow everyone to actually have a call to action and make a difference to the environment through your everyday spend. So that's what I'm here today.
Thank you, guys. So in this panel, we're addressing Fix This. I think it's very apt for builders, and certainly with some really long-term builders in the space and amongst many wonderful startups and scale-ups. Now, this could include things that blockchain could fix, things that may need to be fixed for blockchain solutions to be effective or more effective, or perhaps much bigger, social, environmental, regulatory questions, challenges for which blockchain may be part of a bigger solution. So what do you think is the most significant thing that you think needs fixing, and what is it that you or your company is doing about it?
I think one of the biggest things from our perspective, what needs to be fixed, is around governance. We work with the concepts of publicly issued assets. All of you in this room are participating in this economy. But the challenge is that you're not normally associated with how that governance works. The governance is done to you. So we're very interested in using this technology on how we redesign governance systems so publicly shared assets such as water, which we work with, are actually accounted for in a way that we can all agree on. And at the moment, these marketplaces are often opaque, information asymmetry, which you've been hearing for the last week. So we actually take institutional instruments and legislation and we codify all of that so they're compliant by design, but we add an additional layer in that and actually bringing that governance piece together so communities can start to reorganise their relationship with those really important assets.
So I think from our side, the carbon market is really broken. I think that everyone has an idea of what the carbon market is, but in real terms there's been all the controversy at the moment around the ACCUs in Australia. But just in general there's either a lack of data or a lack of ability to understand the data. So you have people making claims that they're maybe abating or removing certain amounts of carbon from the environment, but actually in real terms, when the audit is done for it, these numbers quite often don't add up. And that's either just due to a lack of understanding, or sometimes it is just outright fraudulent. The way that people can solve this is through having better data, is through having the ability to create an unimpeachable chain of data, which obviously leads really nicely into blockchain for it, to say, well, you don't need to audit my process. Like, the data is self-auditing. It's giving you the information that you need from out there. And I think once we can get to that part and everyone following this same kind of solution, then the market kind of fixes itself.
We needed to fix access to this carbon market. If we talk about ACCUs, in particular the Australian market, it's all that's on offer for Australians. There's no voluntary carbon markets in the Australian market available. You'll get offshore projects, you won't get Australian projects. And I think it matters what's on in your back door. If you pollute here, you should fix it here. And we took the view that markets can drive technology towards bringing emissions down, and that's through price. And you can't create price increases if you don't increase a bigger audience to the market. There's only 58 market players in the carbon market in Australia who are active. 58. You think about how many people want to act in this market. One example, there is an option out there today for you to buy 1 kilogram of carbon as an offset, and they charge you $1 for that 1 kilo. It's worth 3.5 cents. Just put that in perspective. That 97 cents should be going back to the carbon farming industry so that they can create more projects, in my view. There shouldn't be margins that should go back to the farming.
So, I mean, you've all touched on pretty grand challenges in the scheme of things in terms of, regulation, environmental consequence and sustainability topics. What do you need? You're obviously running these businesses out. They've got this incredible purpose. What help do you need to fix this? What help is going to actually, what can others bring to you, or how could you partner, in the trueness of the decentralised world with others to help?
I can start. The beauty of the carbon space is there's no real competition. I haven't encountered competition. I've heard of people doing something similar, something a bit different, but it's not competition. I don't think there's many industries where you can sort of say that. I think where we need help is when people don't know what they're talking about, they should put their hand up and say they don't know what they're talking about, because a lot of people say they're experts in carbon, they're not. A lot of people say they're experts in both, they're not. So I think we need to sort of go in with eyes wide open on a lot of this stuff, especially when you're relating tax laws and you're touching 4 regulators. You literally are making it up as you go. And I think having acknowledge around that and having people who are smart but acknowledge that we have to go through this together is probably the most important thing to run with.
So from our side, I think really it's about the ecosystem that exists. At the moment, there's the government scheme for carbon, which again is kind of broken in so many ways in the way that it's laid out. And I'm going to say for the average person. When I say average person, I mean maybe some of these smaller industries that can't really work on things like the LGCs for the large generation, and how the small generation certificates are handled within Australia. So these voluntary markets, the guy was basically saying there, is that this is actually a really important part of it. But there's no trust in the voluntary markets. So the voluntary markets are that $1 per kilogram of CO2 that we're talking about, or ton of CO2, whichever one it was. That's not sustainable. And you're seeing these really large companies like Shell and BP and all the other big names that are on there that are buying a certain amount of these voluntary carbon credits from voluntary markets. And because there's no trust within them, they have these low prices. However, if we can create an ecosystem where the data forms part of that carbon credit, all of a sudden then that trust doesn't matter, because each one of these tons of carbon can inform you exactly of its makeup, exactly where it came from. So, you're not talking about some guy who's planted a tree halfway across the world and then is claiming 20 years of that tree to make X number of carbon credits. We're actually talking about real tangible data that forms part of it. Now, if we can make that ecosystem interoperable and tradable between anyone, like Guy, like you said, it's, within Betacarbon here, we're not competitors and we shouldn't need to be. So if we can form an ecosystem that brings Betacarbon into the same ecosystem that we're using, that Civic Ledger's using, that any of the other people who've spoken today, that makes everyone better. It makes the whole thing better.
Actually, just to layer in something there, I think, so Katrina and Civic Ledger and Everledger are working together in this critical minerals pilot, which is really exciting. And I think there's something that's truly at the heart of that, which is most of the blockchain deployments that, many blockchain deployments are actually dealing at an infrastructure level. And that's not to be sniffed at. It's not an app. It's something way more meaty, substantial, and requiring that level of interaction and harmony and interoperability that has to be designed, and it's almost mind the gap. I think the more that this ecosystem can actually collaborate and create those full industry solutions, that rising tide of industry adoption ought to float all boats, which would be pretty exciting. Sorry, Katrina.
I think we talk about our industry as blockchain developers and builders, and we see all of this stuff. I mean, we see the pain points, the challenges, and that sort of stuff. But what we do need is the idea of what we've touched on is cooperation. We've been built up through capitalism to actually be competitors. And the work that Everledger and Civic Ledger, and you can tell that we're early, because when it was so early, we thought it'd be very cool to have Ledger in our names. And I want to acknowledge Warwick Powell from Beef Ledger if he's here today, and Power Ledger, because we're still here. But I think the challenge is for us as an industry is that we can actually see the future. We can already plan it, build it, we can see it, but the challenge for us is that we go up against existing institutional thinking. And those institutional thinkings are still very much siloed and very systems thinking. And the challenge for us as an industry for the last 6 years, we've been doing all the heavy lifting. As the DCE guys were sitting on the stage before, and they're saying they have to be this. So I guess what we were looking for is, and I'm always a little bit ranty about this, but the whole idea of seeing this technology as an enabler. It's not something to be seen as a threat, it's an enabler. And once you get people across that line and they think about this is going to enable us, but for us to run as businesses, and I want to be that very, very clear, all of us run companies that happen to use this technology to solve very, very difficult problems. But we have to operate as companies, so we still have a PTYLT on our names. So we have to be compliant, we have to do our work, and all that sort of stuff. So we as a company have to coexist in these two worlds. So there's a lot of work around education. But I think what we tried to do in 2016 is that we actually wrote the roadmap for the Queensland government. If anyone is in this room from the Queensland government, thank you for being here today, but it would have been great to have you here back in 2015 and 2016 when this technology was starting to start, because the reason why we have lack of skills, lack of experience, lack of education is because we have to have a conversation. And we have to understand that because the current systems don't work really well, we're seeing that the reason why the ACCUs have taken the deep dive is because government have interfered with markets. Governments need to understand governance, but they don't need to operate the markets. And I think getting them to understand what their roles are will enable industries like us thrive and enable industry to lead. And that's what we actually require, and that's exactly what is missing from the industry or even the ecosystems that we work in.
Thanks. So you've got a magic wand. It can fix something instantaneously. What is it? And what would you wave your magic wand to fix right now? Let's go first.
I need a really big wand.
It's very powerful.
I think what I like to see is, I know we talk about regulation in this ecosystem a lot. We talk about we need more regulation, we need more regulation. The regulation is there, but it's how we take it to the next level. Rather than actually saying we have to coexist right now in this regulation and build within this regulation, we have to design the regulations of the future that enable this technology to move forward. Because when we did Water Ledger back in 2016 with the Australian government, the reason why we couldn't go forward with it is because they cited the regulatory frameworks. I'm sorry, Katrina, but we're not going to support your company because we don't think the regulation will be able to keep up with how fast this technology is going to be. So the problem then became ours, not theirs. And I think those are the challenges that we have as a company. And I just want to sort of acknowledge, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been sitting on panels for 6 years. I've been doing all this sort of stuff, and I've never talked about our news. But what I'd like to announce today is something very significant for our company. Today We are being supported by Hedera through their Sustainability Fund grant to actually build Waterledger on the Hedera platform. Now, this is a big thing for us because people who know me, we've been Ethereum for 5 years. But we know that that is not sustainable for us anymore. But we've got an infrastructure layer that believes in what we're doing, is actually going to fund us to actually take the next generation of Waterledger to a global audience. And it's that type of support that actually is a massive difference for companies like us. So I'd just like to do a massive shout out to Hedera, to Wes, who's come all the way from the US, and to Rob Allen. And I just want to thank the entire Hedera team and the HBAR Foundation. Thank you.
That's an easy segue for me because the beginning of this week as well, we've been working with Hedera guys. You know, our platform as well was built on Ethereum, and just to echo what you said as well, it is not sustainable going forward. So, you know, our grant was announced at the beginning of the month as well. So again, thank you, Wes, thank you, Rob, thank you for all of the Hedera guys. For us, it's a natural fit. I mean, they have such a huge focus on this ESG ecosystem that they're building, and for companies like all of ours, where, you know, having that infrastructure support is so important. So yeah, again, thank you. For my magic wand, I mean, look, it's probably been mentioned 100 times over the last week, but you know, some people enjoy it with the blockchain 101 that comes in when you have the conversations with companies. Other of us as well, like we have to go through, and every time we're battling with the blockchain versus Bitcoin and blockchain versus cryptocurrency. And look, the simple fact of the matter is that most enterprises do not want to have or even get close to any kind of association with cryptocurrency. So for me, the magic one thing would be, could we magically let people understand that blockchain is not crypto, that, you know, the two things can be separated, and that while both of them are absolutely valid implementations of blockchain, is not everything has to be focused around cryptocurrency. So for us as well, like one of the things we're looking to do is abstract all of that away from our clients. Like obviously you have to pay for the blockchain fees in the native currency of the blockchain. Hedera makes that amazingly easy and predictable, which is the reason why we moved across it. So we can actually physically move that away from the customer so they don't even have to think about it. But if we could get away from the blockchain 101s, every meeting that you're having, or, oh, hey, I've got this idea about putting peas on a blockchain or something like that, that would be fantastic to absolutely avoid that. So that would absolutely be my magic wand thing.
Well, clearly my magic wand should be a Hedera magic wand, but I don't have one. So I think my magic wand is that everyone in this audience believes that they can take control of environmental destiny. And I think a year ago we couldn't have said that. It just wasn't a thing. And God knows what it's going to look like in 12 months' time. And I think it's companies like the ones up here that are willing to step out there on everyone else's behalf. And it's kind of incumbent on the audience, the people watching at home, to actually take some control back. And we're giving you that. And I really look forward to what this conversation looks like in 12 months' time.
Thank you so much. And look, I think we've heard some amazing challenges, regulatory, sustainability within the blockchain world, within the industries that we're working in. We've heard education here, and in other panels we've heard about skill shortages. So there is plenty to fix, but thank goodness this room is full of really courageous entrepreneurs who always see all of those big, intractable, challenging problems as opportunities. So over to everybody else to really grab a hold of those and to line up with your own purpose and see it enacted. Thanks for your time today, guys.
Thank you, Louise.